We always have banter before.
We always do.
I'm like, what is this?
So, hi, Carrie.
Hi, Josh.
I do feel like we shift into a different mindset when we start with the hi.
Did we start
hi,
the last
Carrie?
one with my terrible joke?
I don't
I think
remember.
we did.
No.
And I feel
you
like
want to
we
say it
should-
again?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Why did the monkey fall out of the tree?
Oh.
Why?
Because it was dead.
So, she told this joke in EMDR training, and I don't
that's
lie. I
right.
promise you, I was not trying to be a turd in this. But as soon as she said it, I was like, "The tree or the monkey?"
I'm like, joke
She was
blocker.
so
Never mind.
My
You
mom
ruined
is
it.
a joke blocker. You know, a cock blocker. She's a joke blocker. Like, she
Yeah.
just, like, why?
Analyzes it, takes it
Is
apart.
that with a blue shirt or a green shirt?
I didn't know how to
I'm like,
process
you
the
ruined my joke, Mom.
Just be silly.
Like, if I post funny things on Facebook, she is and I would call her and be like, Mom, you're joke blocking again. Like, nothing I say is serious ever. I just didn't know if you were being serious or if something was really going on. And I'm just like, who is doing this to you? So we had to like break it all down, do a trace back.
Of course.
It's
Of
her
course.
mother. Like, she's very, I was like, you used to be funny. She's like, I did used to be funny. And I was like, we got to get back to that.
Yeah.
I'm making jokes and you're ruining them.
Yeah.
because you took all the funny. You know, I think
It's just like,
I think
Yeah.
you're hilarious. And when you said that joke, I wanted to make sure I laughed at it.
You want to get it
ruined
right
it.
how Whitney is funny,
I mean,
right?
it was
Yeah.
like,
I
I
was
want to
just like-
disappoint her.
Yeah. There's the pleaser. Josh trying to be the pleaser. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Is this about moms today? Is that what we're doing? Or are you just going to talk about
Our moms don't want us to do
They
We
do
probably
not.
all have all
No.
kinds of material.
we
on our
have
mothers.
nice moms.
We have
though.
very
We
nice
all have nice
moms.
moms. We could just riff on our nice moms.
We could just make fun of them a
But
little
our
bit,
moms
right?
would give us good material
They would.
for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good.
Maybe
material.
all moms do.
Why do moms
Sure
tell
do.
the same? Like, when are we going to start telling the same 18 stories?
Oh, Josh and I tell each other
That's
the
not
same
just
stories.
a mom thing. That's a dad.
Yeah, I think it's a
my
familiarity
mom,
thing
I'm just
too.
like, yeah, I've heard that story. And she'll keep telling it.
No.
Yeah.
Everyone in my family also about my dad does that. He tells the McDonald's story almost
It's
every
just like,
holiday.
Dad, have you
Everybody
t-
knows.
We
Well, that's
started making a
because-
bingo.
Oh, yeah, you should.
We did.
You did? That's great.
Yeah,
That's
bingo.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the joke becomes that you're retelling the story. So
Yeah, of
that
course.
has
Yeah,
to
but
be-
Mom's not in on that part of the joke. She thinks that story is brand new, and I'm like, and we all finished the line for her,
Yeah.
and she doesn't.
You nudge the new people to the family and be like, no, this is how this goes.
This is, do you
and,
know
yeah.
the
Yeah.
punchline of this joke?
Yes.
Yes.
I know. I know.
Well, it's good having you here, Whitney. We're going to talk about today.
It's
I'd
not
love to keep
moms.
it- No, might come up again.
Yeah, maybe.
So, but just to kind of let everybody know, we're going to talk about self-awareness today, and particularly these 3 channels of self-awareness. So we're going to be right back with that. So don't go anywhere. Okay, so we're back with another episode of Therapist Take, and just kind of give everybody a breakdown of what we're going to be talking about when it comes to self-awareness. First thing we're going to try to do is just define it, and we're not really going to go with a Webster dictionary. Everybody can look that up on their own if they want to. We're just going to kind of see, because we haven't talked about this before, so we're going to see how the 3 of us define it differently. And then we're going to go into these 3 channels of self-awareness, and then finally talk about how to access these channels. So before we get started, though, I want to just remind everybody to make sure you're checking out the description of our videos. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. But also, if you're listening to this on the podcast, go into the show notes, because I try to make sure to provide as many helpful links as possible of all the different things we talk about, whether it be a link to specifically to the material itself, or some book we just referenced randomly or something. We'll try to put all that in there. So, And so let's introduce our guest.
Okay. Officially.
Officially introduce our guest. As everybody can probably tell, we know each other well. Whitney Warren Alexander, which I always have to remember to say that. Do people do that with you? People that knew you as Whitney
Alexander
Warren?
now. Like, I don't know.
I know, but do people that knew you as Whitney Warren go, Whitney Warren Alexander?
Maybe. I'll put out a poll.
Yeah.
A little monkey survey.
Monkey survey.
Yes. But you've been you've been Alexander for a long time now.
Yeah.
So
It's good
long
stuff.
that your group practice is the Warren Alexander group, which I'd encourage you, anybody watching this, to go check it out and look at the services they provide. And also, you can learn more about Whitney. Whitney's also, in addition to being a licensed marriage family therapist, she's also has EMDR specialty training. You officially certified at this juncture?
I am certified, and I am working on becoming an EMDRIA approved consultant.
Awesome. So, and you're already doing some consultation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so, in our circle, she is definitely on the inner circle in terms of therapists that we consult with and we trust and we think alike. And it probably helps that we all went through graduate school together, right? And so, but anyways, thanks for driving down here. I know you so far have made the furthest trip of our two guests, of our three guests.
Yeah. Yeah. You're winning.
We had Carl come that was just just in the office next to us.
Yeah.
He doesn't get a prize.
Shortest. No.
And then Kelly drove about 10 minutes and you an hour. So
I'm winning.
I think beyond
You
that,
do.
it's probably going to be Zoom for most people.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So anyways, thanks for being here.
I'd love to be here.
Yeah. So we hear self-awareness a lot, and I'm a big proponent of it too. And I'm also kind of like, I don't know if it was the best idea for evolution sometimes, because for me, so we're kind of getting to this first idea of like defining self-awareness, because for me, the kind of the underlying thing, I guess, that we first become aware of as we dive into ourselves is suffering. And so as I think about self-awareness, I'm thinking about understanding my suffering. And I think what I wonder has happened in a lot of ways in our culture, or in, the evolution of human beings, I guess, is that we have become aware of our suffering to such a degree in ways that other species aren't, that we end up creating unnecessary suffering because we are aware of it, but then we don't take it to the next level to understand it. So I don't know. So that's kind of how I kind of see self-awareness. What about you guys?
Well, that takes me into now I'm going to really think about that part, Josh, right? Give me new things to think about. Yeah. I think self-awareness, I guess my first response to it is kind of as an experience that you have within, but also an observation of how you interact with others. And I think that a lot of times when people are coming to therapy, they often aren't aware of what's going on within and are hyper-focused on what's going on with others. And I think it can be the other way, that people are very only aware of what's going on with them and don't think about how others experience them or are experienced. And so I think self-awareness is all of that, right? Knowing what's going on kind of within the internal one-person system, but then also having an awareness of how you interact with those other people, institutions, and other systems. So that's real broad, but...
I would say, since I'm kind of the nerdy one here, I kind of look at like self-awareness as this a tool that we have available to us that not many of us know very well how to use. And so that's why we're going to talk about 3 different channels, because some of the things that both of you guys talked about in your descriptions make me wonder if the people that we're talking about, or maybe even ourselves, are really relying too heavily on 1 or 2 of the channels. But we don't recognize that there is like a synergy, or there's a reason why we have all 3. We're often tuned into 1 or 2, and it makes us actually not terribly self-aware. Honestly, it kind of gets in the way that we're only aware of a couple things, and we act on that information rather than gathering information from every channel that we can to have a full amount of self-awareness. And sometimes when we're stuck on one or two, we're really, maybe we're hyper-focusing on something. And we don't have one of those other channels to kind of open. Oh, okay, yeah, my body suffered in the past, but in this moment, I'm sitting in this comfortable chair. There's air conditioning. There's food in my belly. So we lose one of the channels of self-awareness, and then we just stick in another one, and it doesn't make us terribly useful as human beings.
Right. And so I think that's a good segue into that, into the channels.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to mention is that, I think there's something that you said or Carrie said that kind of implied that, we start a process of self-awareness. So there's this, like, when we say like someone isn't self-aware, I don't think people are completely not self-aware, but they're also not nobody's completely self-aware, or
Right.
maybe as Maslow would say, has reached the apex of self-actualization, and so it is kind of an interesting phenomenon of like, if someone says, well, that person just really lacks self-awareness, and it's like, well, you probably do too, right? I mean, it's
Right.
kind of hard
Yeah,
to say that
sure,
like,
sure.
and not and be authentic and think that, well,
That kind of
if I-
say, don't we all?
Yeah,
Right, yes,
right.
yes.
Plight of being human.
but at the same time, we need to be able to say you lack self-awareness.
How can I help you with that?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about these three channels, because I have a feeling that we're going to have a lot to discuss
Yeah.
as we get into them. So
All right, so that's me, yeah?
yes, that's it.
I want to give a shout out to Deborah Luttrell. She is a trainer, and I believe she's in Washington State, and she's kind of in the EMDR land. And she is the one that basically introduced a lot of these concepts to me in a training that I took. And it's just been incredibly helpful for both for helping my trauma clients be able to endure doing trauma therapy work without getting stuck. So stuck looks like when you're doing trauma work, it could either be flooding or it could be dissociation. And neither one of those are what we want when we're working on trauma work. So the tenets of self-awareness really have been really transformative to my practice with my clients. And I think just for the general layperson, it's kind of walked me into, thinking about this concept far more deeply. And if you're one of my interns or one of my coworkers, you know that, I'm just banging on about it all the time. But what I like to introduce is this concept that self-awareness lives along three channels. We have our body sensations, we have our emotions, and we also have our thoughts. But more important than the content of what we're thinking, it's actually more important to notice the quality of our thoughts. And so learning how to do mindfulness and practicing regularly how to slow down and grab information from all three of those channels. I start out by having my clients do that 3 to 4 times a day. And I want them to write them down. And it really is less important what they're saying. It's more important for them to engage in the activity. And what I have consistently found as I've been introducing this is that, again, one channel seems to dominate, maybe two, but there is always a third channel of what I just mentioned that they are just not used to tapping into, right? So let's say it's body sensations. I am have one of my clients do this, and after a couple weeks, she comes back, she goes, I hate my mattress. How long have you had that mattress? For 10 years. I have had this mattress for 10 years, but I am so, disembodied from myself, and I'm putting fancy words in her mouth, but essentially so disembodied that she's like, I can just fall asleep anywhere. I'm just not used to paying attention to my own body. And, we spend a lot of time talking about, well, if I'm not aware of my own body, how am I utilizing or not utilizing information that comes from my body to make decisions, to know if there's a boundary violation? And the answer is I'm not.
Right.
My favorite, and what I find the most, is the people who believe that they are self-aware because they're so tuned into their cognitions, right? Their thought life is rich and they think it holds all the answers to things. And that's why I ask people to really learn in the meditation that we're doing and in the exercise that it's not your thoughts, it is your thought quality. Are they going fast? Are they going slow? Are they stuck? Are they darting around quickly? And that can give us information more so than us believing that somehow in our minds we can think through what an answer is. Because as you were saying, Carrie, those ones that are so, would think of themselves as self-aware, but maybe they're just stuck in their own thoughts about themselves or about other people. It's really not even productive.
Sure.
And then lastly, the ones who may be aware of their emotions or are completely unaware of their emotions. And I see it on both sides, right? If I lean very heavily on this, I don't know how to move into those other things to give me more information. Or if I just don't pick up information on the emotions channel. Think of what that would do to a person to not gather just data along that point. And so my idea and what I work with my clients on is a recognition that gathering data on all three of these points is incredibly important for you to learn who you are and how life affects you and what you would like to do about that. So that's kind of my introduction to the idea of how I conceptualize self-awareness and then how I kind of break it down with the people that I work with.
Yeah. It's so many things as you talk about it. Because I agree, I haven't done your exercise in necessarily the way you're describing, but I agree that you'll tend to find people lean heavily in one or two areas, right? And I think that even more specifically, you can see how people that have been through a lot of trauma are going to oftentimes need to cut their body off, right? I often say your head is cut off at the neck.
Or cut off emotions.
Or cut off emotions, right? Sure. And a lot of times, depending on, right, the actual, experiences, you can see that. But I think the idea of what you're guiding people towards is that all three have important value and they have more value when you use all three.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that's really, I've never heard of it broken down this way. It all makes sense, and because where my mind is going with it is, oh man, what does it look like when somebody is really good at the emotions and the body sensations, but their thought quality isn't really good, right. Or when they have really good thought quality, but the other two are lacking, which I would imagine would impact the thought quality, right?
Well, and thought quality is probably neither good or bad, but what I have noticed from doing this is that there are times when my thoughts actually turn off. And I would have thought that I was pretty heavy on thoughts, but it turns out I actually lean far more heavily on body sensations than anything else. That's a channel I tune into the most. And so sometimes my workout instructor will come by and she'll be like, how many sets is this? Because we'll do stuff that's timed. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just doing it till the timer goes off. And it's amazing to me how much I just turn off all my thoughts. And that's actually, for me, it's a heightened stress response, right? And when I'm working out and doing, HIIT exercises, I'm probably forcing myself to be in kind of a heightened state and my thoughts turn off and I'm like, yeah, what is that like for somebody whose body sometimes their nervous system gets hijacked and they have a trigger and their thoughts just turn off and they become completely robotic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that like if like the movie Inside Out, how they're like, these key players and every part has a purpose based upon the context, right? And so what I'm wondering is like contextually, like, is there a point in time where emotions kind of needs to take the wheel and body sensations and thought quality take a backseat to emotions? And then vice versa,
Very much so. And I think that only gets messed up when we are talking about trauma because trauma is essentially time travel, right? In
Right.
those moments, we have to learn how to trust that our body is going to do what it needs to do to get us to survive. And if we're sitting here, then that is true. But once we have unprocessed trauma, we are time traveling to a time when it made sense for my thoughts to turn off, or a time where it made sense for my emotions to turn off, or a time when it made sense for me not to check in with my body. And that time is not right now.
Right. So if we just kind of use go back to your example of working out, I would imagine in that context, when you're putting your body through stress, that body sensations needs to be the thing that's most focused on, and everything, and other things take a back seat to it.
But I have interviewed other people to see what happens. I have other people that actually turn off their body sensations and stay in thoughts
Yes.
and emotions, and they're more prone to injury
Yes.
when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I was
there's a
thinking,
buddy
too.
of mine, when we do workouts, he'd go, I'm about to go dark.
Yes.
And he would, and I'm like, man, like it's scary what he would put his body through and how he could do that. And I'm not saying he was doing anything unhealthy, but I wasn't going to do that.
Well, and it'd be interesting if you push yourself to a heightened state to notice which channel of yours naturally narrows down and turns
Yeah.
off. You just
Well-
don't know.
Well, let's talk about this. Because let's talk about working out, for example, because I've paid a lot of attention to how different people work out, and it really was kind of that particular instance where I was like, man, I don't go dark ever. I stay very in the light, very much. And so it's like, and hearing you talk about this, it's like, for me, like, it's like body sensations and emotions have kind of teamed up, and it's like, and emotions are saying like, hey, body sensations, like, when you reach this threshold, I'm going to start throwing a fit, because once I start feeling pain, I want to slow down. Like my brother, for example, he starts feeling pain. He's like, and he wants to get after it,
Yeah.
right? And
It means you're doing it right.
When I'm working out, I have to access my thought quality to tell myself, hey, it's okay. You're not hurting. You can go harder. You can go longer. You're still okay at this point, So it's kind of weird. I mean, just hearing you say that and using the workout example, I'm like, oh, wow, that is...
Because that's
Yeah.
our example of how we are putting our bodies in a simulated stress experience, right? That's our best example that we can have, that's kind of using our body as a lab. But
Yeah.
I'm working with people who, have past experiences where the nervous system gets hijacked and makes them feel like maybe one of us do when we're doing a really intense workout, right? It just, it moves them into that heightened state. So it's my best example for how to use our body as a lab.
Yeah, that's really... It's really fascinating. Who are the players when you work out?
Well, it's changed. So when I started making exercise really regular, I found I really liked it because I would turn off all my body and turn off my feelings and just think. And I was
Oh.
listening and thinking and listening and thinking. And I started to crave that freedom, right, from those other channels. But I've had some injuries. And now I can't do that anymore. I have to pay attention or I'm going to hurt my back,
went dark.
right?
I was going to say,
And
There
it
he goes,
really took it's taken the pleasure out of exercise in the way that it used to. And
that's
it's
too
really
bad.
unfortunate. It's really, really unfortunate. So now I don't look forward to it. It's more difficult. I still do it as frequently as I did because I'm supposed to, but it doesn't feel as good as it used
and
to.
it really informs how I'm an instructor sometimes at my workout class. And so when I'm giving the instructions, I'm always like, and I want you to notice you're going to feel it in this muscle group. And if you're feeling it in this muscle group, you need to move here, do this. Like,
Sure.
It's been a way for me to understand form and to keep form correct. And I just think that comes from, a long, long time ago, how I was trained to work out.
Yeah.
But keeping the body sensations, one, definitely is more so after you have an injury, right? Trauma related.
Literally.
But
yeah.
also for me, when I was working out, even if it wasn't making sure I didn't, mess my knee up again, it was about making sure that my form was correct. Because I
Sure.
worked out with bodybuilders who were
Right,
like,
right.
this is a bicep exercise. You get your back into it. You
Yeah.
know, you're not going to get the form you're looking
Right.
for. You're going to get the muscles.
Right. And I think that, learning a new exercise, okay, I'm doing something I haven't done. I'm going to have to really notice, but it doesn't hit the same freedom of, this is an hour that I don't have to tune in to things that I'm pretty tuned into most of the time. And now it's kind of changed that.
But even in like, and I'll move away from working out, but like I've noticed in like high stress experiences, like for whatever reason, like when my kids decide that it's like, you know, WWE in the backseat of the car, and I'm really, can we please just be quiet? And I will check in with my body. I'm like, okay, like, where am I feeling that in my body? And sometimes my body actually is less accessible in that particular moment. And my thoughts are a little bit more accessible. And like, and I'll notice kind of the quality of my cognitions. And it's just enough when I touch base on all three of them, it's like they kind of mold together. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to, you know, loosen my shoulders up, move my jaw, take a few deep breaths. And it's just enough to bring, you know, whatever I need to a high stress situation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we were talking about working out because I think that was kind of a more, you know, a simpler example,
Safe.
more tangible for
Yes.
people to kind of wrap their minds around. Let's do something a little more complicated. And let's talk about relationships and, you know, the complexities that go along with trying to figure out, you know, how these three channels are operating or not operating when you're engaged in any particular type of relationship.
So I haven't gone this way, but you know, my other interests besides, you know, all kinds of everything that starts with E is Enneagram. So I kind of sometimes wonder if
Do we know you're an 8?
Yes, I am. I'm an 8, and we don't do feelings very well. So in relationships,
We know, Whitney. We know.
We know.
I'm a joy and a pleasure to
You
be
are.
around.
You
Just
are.
watch out. I'm going to get mad. But we don't tune into our emotions. And so I think that my thought quality and my body sensations tend to be what I lead with when I'm in a relationship and I'm maybe in a stressed out point, or just not slowing down and doing any kind of practice to bring in, you know, the third part.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm thinking about that too. So it's almost like, in a way, in high stress environments, your emotions are almost perceived as dangerous to some.
This Enneagram,
extent.
we don't like them.
Yeah.
It angers it. That's all we get.
Right.
It angers
And we
me.
don't even
Right.
want to talk about that.
Yeah,
It's just
which
pretty
really
obvious.
is hurt parading around as something. That's
Yeah.
right.
Or concern or worry, something softer than anger.
Softer.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think for me, like, in thinking about that, I'm like, I think emotions give me comfort in high stress. So, like, that's what I want to go to. And then, of course, you know, I want to eat food because it makes everything taste better. It makes certain experiences. So I'm wondering if that has to do with, like, body sensation.
Right?
Stuff, right? So, like, you know, emotions do stir things up. But what I
Right.
don't find a lot of comfort in high stress situations is thought quality. It's so
yeah.
weird. It's interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I like that. Because the interesting thing is that and Carrie and I talk about this all the time, like that. Like, critical thinking is so important to me. Like, it's and so I'm wondering, kind of in a way, like, if it's the thing I do the least well, or you know,
Or you rely on it the most heavily.
right. I mean, like, so, like, that's like
Perhaps.
like Adam Grant's material stuff. He wrote a book called I can't remember the name of it.
Think again.
Think Again. Yes, great book on critical thinking. Everybody should read it. But
Especially thinkers.
yeah, I mean, well,
Or
we do-
non-thinkers.
I mean, isn't that what we do for a living? And so,
Yeah.
like, our controlled environment, and I mean, it's part of what we do, right? I
Well,
do
we have to be
understand.
thinking about what we're doing. Yeah.
Right. I mean, part of what we're doing as therapists, and in terms of talk therapy, is really kind of helping others learn to think more critically of their situation. It's not the only thing we do, but it's definitely
No.
part of it.
Right.
I would say we are all trained critical thinkers, but it's interesting that it's like our professional environment is where, you know, that's where I do it the most, right? I mean, I like doing it outside of here, but it's much more difficult. But I'm much more confident in this setting to be able to go there, access that part, present it to others, and
But that is what drew me to. So the type of work that I'm drawn to is somatic focus, right? And so what I have found in doing EMDR for these years is that the talk therapy can only get a person so far. And so, I'm thinking, well, I've relied so heavily on, cognitions and trying to come up with just the right reframe. And it's just, for some people, it's just not it. And so that's what, as my journey unfolded with EMDR, it kind of pulled me over just because I was seeing the problems in being so cognitive focused in EMDR. And that's what pulled me over to the somatic focus, which is what brought me to this particular training. And this particular stuff is just a recognition that, cognitive is one, but it's only one. And there are two others.
So when you say, can you maybe explain somatic?
Somatic, the body, right?
Okay.
That the body holds information. And my belief is the body holds truth, right? The ultimate goal for me of pulling information on self-awareness is learning how to get quiet with yourself and say, does this cross a boundary for me? Does this not cross a boundary for me? Do I know what this is about? Do I know how to explain this? Am I comfortable setting a boundary? But the idea that in ultimate self-awareness, we begin to recognize truth for ourselves and non-truth, and that there is all kinds of non-truth floating out there. This is actually a good place for your quote, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, should I
Yeah,
read the
yeah,
quote?
share it.
Okay, so I'm going to read the quote that we have pulled up on. There's nothing more important to true growth than realizing that you are not the voice. Hannah's head's in the way. Not the voice of the mind. You are the one who hears it.
That's right.
Which is Michael Singer, by the way, who wrote the book, The Untethered Soul.
Hashtag untethered soul.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
But it's just the idea that I don't even know where that story came from, right? And so I think we were sharing the last time we were talking about those stories where this self-awareness has just kind of stopped you in your tracks. And I was sharing with Josh that I was really short when I was little. They never thought I'd be over 5 foot. And those of you you guys know me, I'm not short. I'm actually probably tall for a girl, I would say.
Well, how tall are you?
I'm 5'8".
Yeah, that's tall for a girl.
So, I remember one time my dad was teasing me and calling me Stumpy, which is, by the way, not a great name to call a short person, just
Right.
in general,
Right.
but that's probably why he chose it. And I'm nearly eye to eye with him. And I looked at him, I said, you do know that I'm not short anymore. And he was like, well, I'll be darned, you are not short anymore. And it was just this story about who I was so entrenched in who they saw me as for that many years that it took it took away the ability for him to have an awareness, but it conflicted with my truth. And I was so in tune with myself that in that moment I could say, well, that is a story that you have about me,
Right.
but that isn't
Right.
the
That
truth.
isn't true.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's talk about how people can access this, because I'm sitting here
Yeah.
thinking about
That's what I was
I
thinking.
just love this conversation because I'm just going through my Rolodex of memories of how it's hitting me when I've applied this and not even realize I was applying it. One time my son and I were out jogging. This is probably, he's 16 years old now, but this was probably 4 years ago. And we're jogging. He goes, Dad, I think I look silly when I run. And I said to him, well, you probably do if you think it. I'm like, your mind is going to try to create the image of yourself. So if you're imagining yourself as running silly, then your body is probably going to try to replicate that in some way. So if you don't want to run silly, then run like a badass. And that's probably the first time I said ass to him,
It's your diary moment right there.
Yeah, right.
Today my dad said ass.
Yeah.
Smiley face,
Oh, my.
exclamation mark.
A asterisk.
Yes,
I'm
he's
gonna
a
write
good
that
kid.
down.
Yeah.
First
It was
word
probably
won't
the
write
first
it.
time that he had permission to use it, I guess.
Yes,
Probably
yes.
a better way of saying that. And but I was trying to make a point to him that what does that look like, and then you'll probably do it, and that was a lesson for him from my personal experience on trying to, I realize like whatever I'm feeling in my body, like, or I don't know if it starts with emotion or where it begins, but it's just like that I kind of become that, and so when I like, I'm not gonna, walk around mopey. I remember one time telling you, Carrie, I think once I was like, it's weird. Like when I walk around like I'm thin, I weigh less on the scale. And I think it's probably because I am being more mindful of what I eat and and that's why I'm a big proponent of like Noom for people that are doing like weight loss stuff, because it's a psychological relationship with food. But it's just so weird how like just when you start in that space of like and how you perceive yourself, and then all of a sudden it manifests in your person, right?
Well, and awareness would be, let's gather information from all channels, right?
Yeah.
So my thoughts, how fast are they moving? Are they stuck in other people's perception? Are they stuck in my perception? Have I gathered any information? That's all thinking, right? Emotions, how do I feel when I run? Do I feel good when I run? Does it matter that other people think I look goofy if I love running?
Right.
How am I in my body? Does my left knee hurt? Do I need to pull my hips a little bit more centered? Do I often so if we're trying to assess if a story is true, this is just a great way to start like assessing. But you guys know as therapists, sometimes our clients come to us with stories about themselves and you're just like, yeah, but where did you learn that?
Sure. Where's the origin of that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, self-awareness is just another method, right? In our cognitive land, we are the ones confronting our clients about the stories that somebody may have given to them. And in somatic land, in cognitive, or in the self-awareness, as they're doing these exercises, they will start to be confronted with body sensations, thought qualities, emotions that don't fit the story that was given to them, right? If what I was told is that I am a bad kid or that I am too much, and then I start recognizing that, I feel really good when I'm feeling my emotions. I experience my body in this particular fashion. My thoughts are going at a nice and paced. I don't understand why somebody told me that I was too much. Maybe that was just a story they told me for how they didn't know how to deal with me. And so they arrive at it in a different fashion instead of us as the therapist having to always be the carrier of the reframe and coming up with our client's defensiveness about, that story has become my truth. And we're like, what if it's not true?
Yeah.
But I also think that what you said too, Whitney, is something that it's not that any of these channels has more or less value necessarily, but I think the body is the more direct source of truth than the others.
You
and so
said it, and I believe it.
And because I just can't get around the fact that nothing else works in the same way as tell me what's going on for you. Where do you feel it?
Where
what
do
does
you
that
feel
mean
that
to
in your
you?
body?
And right now, right? That's the best part about the work that we do is that we don't have to ask people to reflect on that when when that happened. How did they feel? We also get to sit with them now and ask them how their body feels now.
What I will say is that the reason I like all three of these so much, and the frustration that I would get, because I love, again, I think I'm very body oriented, and that fits with Enneagram too, right? That's my center of intelligence. But people that have chronic ailments, chronic pain, have learned to disembody. And so, teaching them how to dip back into their body and recognize that I can move in and I can move out just as I'm gathering information.
Yeah, that's a
Right?
really important pacing skill. Because I think when you have been disembodied, it's very overwhelming, right? It's like walking into a room of all fluorescent lights, right? And so it's at minimum uncomfortable and at maximum just completely outside their window of tolerance, right? And I'm not good at it because I would rather get things done than take time to eat or, whatever. And so tuning in is unfortunate because it really jacks with your plan. If you
And
slow
that is
down
what they
and
tell me
feel.
too, right? I didn't want to buy a new mattress. I didn't want to confront the problems that exist in my relationship.
Sure.
I did not want to have to think about if this job is really what I want to do for the rest
Right.
of my life.
Yeah. And, it's also, when people hear you ask, you went through that whole list of questions, and um, that could be a little overwhelming for someone, because I do think when people go through like a break and it's like they're forced to do this, it probably does feel a lot very overwhelming in that sense. But what would you like? Where would you say for people to start? Because you,
Yeah.
like I said, you just went through a whole bunch of
Yeah.
questions. But that's a lot of questions. So like, we got these three areas: body sensation, emotion, and thought quality. Like, are there like three questions on per area, or is there like what's the process?
I
there?
would say if you want to start somewhere, start with mindfulness. That's what this is. It's a form of mindfulness, right? So body scans. If, you can get on my favorite app that I like to use is called the Insight Timer. It's got like a little gold bowl. It's free. So a body scan often will include scanning. Again, that's kind of the body awareness. But really and truly, it's noticing and doing nothing about it. Because again, let's say that I notice that there is a comfortable place in my body and I notice there's an uncomfortable place in my body. Don't I always just think, oh, I need to do this, or oh, I'm thinking fast, I need to slow that down? No, we need to learn how to have a healthy relationship with our body where we meet it where it's at and say, I see that your mind is moving fast. I'm not going to do anything about it. Now I'm going to check in on the other channel. And now I'm going to check in on the other channel. And oftentimes that's just enough to start, kind of allow all three of those parts to move together. But I say it starts with, mindfulness, right? And so you can literally type in self-awareness, mindfulness. You'll find plenty of stuff in Insight Timer.
Yeah.
But that's where it starts, is really I'm learning how to be aware without immediately thinking, because I'm, a good Northern American who's just always thinks that we have to do stuff all the time. Oh, I got to do something about that. No, no, you just need to notice it. I notice that my jaw is really tight. I notice that my thoughts are turned off. I'm not doing anything. I don't back off of my exercise just because my brain turns off. I actually kind of enjoy it. I'm like Carrie. Sometimes I work out because I don't want to think anymore.
Sure.
Yeah. I think breathing is so, I mean, of course that's going to definitely be involved in mindfulness. But for me, I started doing box breathing, which is, like 5 seconds in through the nose. For people who don't know, 5 seconds in through the nose, hold it for 5 seconds, and out through the mouth for 5 seconds, and or some period of time that's equal. But it's I would use it in grad school to after I worked out to lower my heart rate, because I wanted to stop sweating before I went back to what I was doing. So I'd be in the shower and just start doing box breathing to get my heart rate to go down. But as I've gotten older, I found it to be breathing and breathing techniques to be crucial to being able to, get, to be able to access whatever space I'm in effectively, wherever I'm at. And, it's when you're talking about disembodiment and everything, there's almost sounds like you're talking about when that happens unintentionally, not good. But when it's intentional, it can be
it can be protective. I mean, disembodiment is always protective. And when I work with dissociative clients, what I try to tell them is I don't want to take dissociation away from you. What I want to do is give you a feeling like you have a choice as to whether you want to dissociate or not.
Right.
And when it feels like it's bigger than you and it just swoops down and takes away from you, then you don't feel like you have a choice. But as I've become more aware of dissociation, one of the things I was sitting, this is so odd, I was sitting in a funeral, and it was a kind of one of those turn or burn kind of sermons, which you don't expect at a funeral. I'm not gonna lie. And I just felt myself dissociating. And the way I dissociated as a kid was that I would just go off into these little fanciful stories in my head and just tell stories. And I was like, that's how I dissociate. And then I was sitting there, I was like, you know what? I could ground myself. I could do my 5 senses. I could do all of the things I need to do to get back into my body, but I'm good on Turner Burn sermons. I don't need to clock in another one. So I just dissociated through that entire funeral, and it was fine. But
What's a
I
turn
had
and
the
burn?
choice. Turner Burn.
Turner
like,
burn. Yeah, what is
You've
that?
never heard that before?
Turner
Like
burn.
turn or burn was like you
Or
better
burn.
turn your
Or
life
burn.
around or you're going to
Oh,
go to
turn
hell.
or burn.
Not the
Yeah.
name Turner. Yeah.
Okay.
Turn.
Turn or burn. Sorry for the Kansas.
Yeah.
I'm
That
sure
sounds horrible.
they are like turn your life over. You're going straight to hell. And I just wasn't expecting a hell sermon
Yeah.
at a funeral. I just
Well, I'm
Yeah.
checking out on
right.
that
I was gonna say,
But I
yeah.
noticed again. The
Yeah.
more I am
Yeah.
aware, the more I'm noticing that I checked out, and then I asked myself, "Do I want to check back in?" I have the tools to check back in. I can notice my feet on the ground. I can do box breathing. I can do something to bring myself back into my body and pull myself out of these stories. But I don't need to. If I was at a meeting and my input was necessary and I felt myself dissociating, I might want to do one of those things because I want to be present when I got that trigger.
Sure.
This particular case, I didn't need to.
Sure. I can think of many times in my life when I recognized I was about to, or I just had dissociated and been like, oh, thank goodness.
Yep. It's a protective measure.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I am so grateful for that.
Yeah.
Right? That skill, right? But it's the flow of like you're talking about. I can go away and I can come back.
That's right.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
And self-awareness is the very basis of knowing enough, being enough aware of yourself that you even feel yourself moving, slipping, right?
Yeah.
Moving out
Yeah.
of your window of tolerance. And then
Yeah.
saying, do I have some skills to bring me back in? Do I want to use them?
Sure. Checking. And it's a check-in system, right? Again, the idea that all these things, like we're so designed beautifully, right? They're all here and adaptive. And if we trust and we understand how they work, they're probably going to find a beautiful music in a sense to play together. But all of us are going to have, channels that we're more familiar and skilled with and others that are harder for us,
Right.
right?
And for a very, a nervous system that has a lot of triggers in it, you're better having access to all three channels, and you'll need to practice it a lot more. And my niche has become very significant complex trauma, right? So the majority of people that I work with that don't have complex trauma find this interesting. They can do it. And it is helpful for their trauma processing. For the people that I work with complex PTSD, we can't do it if they're not doing this,
Right.
because I know that they don't have all three channels
Right.
based
Right.
on their history.
Right. And then they're not ready to do the actual
That's
healing
right.
work.
They cannot stay in their. They can't be embodied enough to say, "I think I'm slipping out."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
So, I don't mind telling personal stories. So it just got me thinking about when I was a patient of EMDR. There was one point in time where in the process of bilateral stimulation where I felt like it scared me a little bit because I felt like my head was about to explode, and then all of a sudden, I started crying, and it was just such a release, and I realized that when I need to cry, there's a place I feel it in my body. And I remember going back to her one session because I was feeling it, but I didn't know how to access it. I didn't know how to get in there and get the release. And I was just like, I just looked at her. I'm like, hey, I need you to make me cry, because I knew. I at least had enough understanding of my body at that point to know what I need. I wasn't afraid of that feeling anymore like it was when it first happened. And but I still didn't quite know how to tap into that, which I think is another skill in and of its own. It takes some time. I can do it now. I need to cry, and I tell people everybody needs a cry song. So, songs, music, poems, they don't create sadness, they access it.
Well, and
and
EMDR, right? What we're teaching our clients is if there's any stories about tears, right? Like this is, I've done the work to notice emotions and not do anything about them. And so I've practiced and I've practiced and I've practiced. And then when it comes up in EMDR or even just cognitive trauma processing, I I notice that I want to cry, and I am training now and I've trained my brain to not do anything about it. And so what we're doing is we're trying to teach our, trauma-informed defenses to, kind of step back just a little bit. And that makes healing far more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk about this forever,
All day.
probably.
Right. You said
Yeah.
you're the nerd here. I think all three of us can nerd out
It's
about
fun
this stuff for
watching
a while.
Whitney get into it. She's like, oh, like, if I bring up something like, people might not be able to see her on screen when I'm talking, but I'll look over and she's like getting ready.
Excited.
Like, oh, I got something for
Yeah,
you here.
let's talk.
But it's always fun having you here. You should move down here.
Answer that right now on the spot. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Your 8 just showed up.
Dude, there's plenty of work to be done in Stillwater.
She rolled her eyes at
She
me.
did. She did. That's the dynamic.
There is
though.
plenty of work,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. There's no
But we
shortage
like
of work anyway.
seeing you, though.
I know.
I know.
Nobody sees me anyway unless you go to my workout class or
Yeah.
you have me come for a podcast recording.
That's right. We'll just
Basically,
make you count for
that's
that.
a nice way of Whitney saying, I
I'm
don't
not.
like seeing people.
No, I
as
don't
much as
hang
you
out
like
with
seeing people,
anybody.
Josh."
My kids are at that age that they just, someday I'll come back to the world of the living. I don't
Yeah.
know what year that will be. You guys can tell me. But
First grade.
Okay. I'm
Right.
Both in first.
okay. Both above first grade. We're still 4 years
Yeah.
out.
So you got a little while. Yeah.
4
Oh,
years
yeah.
out of me being a productive human being in an adult sense.
Well, we'll be here waiting for you.
We'll be here holding your spot.
We can get our little reading glasses and hang
Oh,
out.
for sure. For sure.
Well, we hope that people watching this or listening to this was able to draw something from it. And
Yeah.
maybe we should have you back sometime to talk about the Enneagram.
Or EMDR, either
Yeah.
all E's.
I guess we could do
Everything's an
all
E,
of it.
yes.
Yeah.
Wait, this one's not an E. We should make it
I
an
know.
E
I'm
word.
going to have to.
You're going to have to title it with an E. When
Yeah.
There's
I'm
your
gonna have to
homework.
You can go like
Really?
this. Self-awareness. EH
No.
dash self-awareness.
EH.
It used to be emotions focused, and then,
Oh, yeah, there you go.
but now I've moved past emotions focused. It's
Well, because it's
Everything
all of
Yeah.
it.
Right.
so now I have to drop that E.
Yeah, there you go.
You did. Okay.
Well, we appreciate you coming.
Yep.
Thanks
Thanks,
for having me.
Whitney.
Yeah.
Thanks.